That's what I'm gonna do. So did that work? So yes. Um, a little bit about information technology. Hopefully, you're aware of what that is now. You're doing a diploma in information technology. Stakeholders, I think that we might have spoken about this in yesterday's lesson or the last lesson, but basically, as opposed to owners, I think maybe we talked about owners. So, who's the owner of a system? So, if we had the CNAQ system, okay, so it's a government thing. It's not really owned as a private college or anything like that. It's government run. So, look, I do have a student. How about that? Too. You guys doing CR12? Yeah, sorry, CR31. You guys, look. If you stand more than two meters away from me, I can keep my mask on. Is that all right? So yeah, there we go. So I got some students. We're good. So what I should do is I should put this on the display so you can see, right? So I'm gonna try and get that thing working. Yeah, lights are working. So we are having a class, and I got students. So this is what it looks like, students, when we have class here. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, there we go. So I'm sorry I didn't bring any printed handouts. Do you need them? Oh, good. Because I don't have them. But maybe next time. All right. So yeah. So now the students can see what I see on my screen. It's probably different than what they see. So we're yeah. Anyway, so stakeholders as opposed to owners. So if we had the CNAQ, people here because I'm leaning over there. What can I do? I'll stand up so you guys can see me and you guys can see me. It's all right. Standing up is good. It's good for my exercise. So you'd think of owners if they own the system. That would typically be the in the example of a college. The owners would be the management, but the stakeholders are everybody that's affected by the system. So if you're in IT and we have an IT system, the stakeholders includes you in the IT department, but also includes all your customers, also includes the management that we talked about. Now, there's this other term there, information workers. That's not you. You when you graduate, you're going to have a diploma in IT. That doesn't make you an information worker. Information worker is just anybody who works with information. So that could be an accountant, could be any manager, anybody that's sort of sitting in an office with lots of data coming to them. That's not you. You're a bit more technical than that. You're this other kind of worker, knowledge worker. You're somebody who has a particular area of expertise. In your case, it'll be IT, and then you bring that expertise to your job, and that expertise helps you to do your job. It's not just working with information like a data engineer. So system engineer we talked about. So the enrollment system at CNAQ, the owner would be the registrar or whatever. System users, they could be anybody. So for example, if we had PeopleSoft, if we were talking about that, your system owners could be anybody who is putting data into it, working with the system. Your teachers would be very much on PeopleSoft, but so would anybody and in the office that's using it. Awesome, man. So I just answered that question. Who would be the user? Oh, see if you can think of another one, guys. Oh, sorry, I didn't get you guys to introduce yourselves. Who have I got here? Nasser. Welcome, Nasser. Khalid. So other students, maybe you're going to be jealous because we have two students here that are actually here. That's cool. Nasser and Khalid, thank you. Um, so a system. Can you guys think, Nasser, Khalid? Can you think of anybody who might be uh, a system user of, say, PeopleSoft? I gave two examples. Maybe you can think of another. Oh, any system here at the college. How about D2L? Register? Yeah, they do it. The website. Anybody else? Do you use D2L? There you go. So you're a system user, right? Students. Very good. So even the CNAQ enrollment system has students use that a little bit, and sponsors and government use it as well. System designer and builders, you could think of your IT people as taking this role because they usually design the systems that they build. And of course, they do bill it. Now, this idea of IT governance, the idea there is, do we have some rules and how do we make sure that we follow the rules? That's going to be your IT governance. So it's very much a sort of a management sort of thing. Compliance, the word compliance, you might see that come up a lot in business. So compliance is basically saying, do we follow the regulations of our government? So, like, for example, do we follow the law in Qatar? So that is important in IT. It actually is because Qatar actually has a law specifically for IT. And so security, cybersecurity law. And so we can't violate that law. There's penalties for that. So you'll have people in the organization, their job is to just make sure that the way that we've set up the way that we work with our systems is within the law of the country, but not just within the law of the country, also within international standards. Um, maybe maybe we want to sell a particular product. Then that must be done in a certain way, etc. And so we have compliance officers. They're typically going to be somebody like a lawyer, or accountant, and they'll work on that. And so that's where this governance and compliance sort of work together. When we talk about governance there, we're talking about basically management, right, on that. So when it talks about resource management, it's the money within the organization. How are we spending it? With IT systems? Are we getting our value for our money? Performance measurement. We can measure the networks. We can measure speed. We can measure the systems, make sure that they're working. Strategic alignment. What that's referring to is uh, does the computer systems, the IT, does it do what the company is trying to do? So, in other words, does our IT systems that we have here at CNAQ, do they do what the CNAQ mission is? Is that helped by that? Uh, Risk management, you could lose money at any time, but there's other things that you could lose. You could lose private information if that, and that could be a big problem. I mean, then you're very, very exposed, and you could be exposed legally. You could have your systems go down. Your computer's not working. That's so those things are all part of your risk management. Value delivery, basically managing your costs and uh, and also what it is you're providing. Okay, so have you heard the term audit before? I hope. If you had, you may have and just don't remember, but if you had, it would probably be in the context of accounting. So we talk about a financial audit, which is basically where you go and you look at all the record keeping that an organization has and make sure that they've done it in the right way and make sure that the numbers that they have are true. So finances are not the only place where you can do an audit. You can do an audit on computer systems. You can do an audit on engineering. And so the idea there is to just check to see that when you created the computer systems that it was created in the way that you said it would. And likewise for any other engineerings. Yeah. So compliance officer. What a compliance officer I mentioned before, right? But they're going to make sure that you do things that in the way that you said you would. Okay. So we have these two terms that we're going to refer to. Am I going okay for you guys? Thanks so much for coming, Khalid and Nasser, because it's much easier to teach when I can actually see people. That's awesome. So we have these two terms, de jure and de facto. These are Latin words. Latin is the base language for French and Spanish and all of those. De jure just means by law or the way it has to be. Hi, how are you? Got student number 3. And so your name? Do you mind if do I need? It's okay for you? Because I'm thinking that you're more than 2 meters away from me, right? As long as you stay more than 2 meters away from me, we're good, right? Is that okay? Yeah. All right. Well, you're a long way away from me. Um, yeah. So de jure means that we actually, it's like law. So if you have standards that the government says you must do this, that's de jure. But it doesn't just have to be the government. It could be some other organization. Um, it could be like uh, an international standard setting body. So, an agreement there, accreditation body. So, for example, the College of the North Atlantic, our courses are all accredited. The diploma that you guys are doing is accredited by the KIPS, which is Canadian Information Processing Society. So that's accredited. That means that what they're saying is, yeah, the graduates of these diplomas, we think that they should be able to be hired to work in Canada doing information technology. So that's what we mean by it's accredited. Now, in order for us to get that accreditation, we have to do things in a certain way. And so there's certain standards in the way that we do the teaching in the classrooms, in the way we do our assessments, in the way that the college is organized. All of that can be checked and can be added to a standard. Now that's de jure. As it says, de jure standards in IT. We have standards, particularly in networking, particularly in software development. There's standards that are well known, and people follow those. De facto, on the other hand, um, like de jure in some ways that it's something that we want to force to happen, but it's something that we're doing as a short-term gap, I guess you could say. The law standards, laws and standards tend to be slow to be adopted. It takes time to formulate a law. They have their ideas, what they want to have in the law. It could take a few years to get that law in place. And the IT industry is moving very, very quickly. And it's the same with standards. They take some time. So de facto's standards is where a smaller group, it might not be a global thing, might not even be national, but where a smaller group of just companies or a subset of the industry gets together and says, we can't wait for the standards bodies or the government to come up with a standard. We're going to have to do something in the meantime ourselves so that we can work together. That would be a de facto standard. Um, Now Consortio is one of these things that's developing de facto standards, and as it says there, we can't wait for the bureaucrats to do stuff, so we're going to do something a little bit quicker ourselves. ISO, for example, is a international standards body. It takes some time to get ISO things going. Best practices. The idea of best practices is that we can look at what other companies are doing and we can try and see which ones are working and do the things that they're doing. Open source standards you may have heard of. The idea of open source. Have you heard of LAMP stack? LAMP, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. So the lamp stack, those things that I just mentioned, you can use that to develop complete web systems. All right, websites, um, because all of that without paying any money, because all of those things are free to the public. You can download all the source code and you can edit it yourself. These are open systems, they're free to the public, but it also means that if you're a technical person, you can make input in them to change them. And so that's how they work. They're always being updated. And so they're making their own standards, but it's just like people who are sort of expert in that will say, well, you know what, this little thing about Linux would be better if we did this. And so so it does change with time with these people putting input, but it's not something like Microsoft where people are buying it and then Microsoft makes its own standards. So these open source standards, it's made as in some ways it's kind of awesome because it's people all around the world. It not only is it free to have this software and these standards, but it's free for anyone can make their contribution. Of course, it has to be accepted by enough people. All right. So I don't have the lab ready for you yet. I'm hoping to have that later this week. Um, Now, this idea of the frameworks, There are multiple frameworks mentioned here: COVID, ISO, ITIL, and MOF. All of these are about making ITSM work. So we have this idea of ITSM. That's what this lecture is about. Information system, um, information technology systems management. And the frameworks here are, how do we get that to happen? How do we support that? Now, the one that we're going to spend most time is ITIL, but we have these others: COBIT and ISO and MOF. So let's see if we can get through those quickly. COBIT, I think the main thing that I'd say about COBIT, look there, COBIT works with all of these other frameworks. Now, the benefits of COBIT is, I think I'll just move to this slide for that. We have these 5 principles of COBIT, not COVID, not to be confused with COVID, but the idea is it's very much about doing everything in the company in the same way. So we have a top-down sort of hierarchical, forcing things to happen all in the same way. So we use terms like it's holistic, just meaning that everything in the organization is considered at the same time. We use a single integrated framework. Yeah, and so the idea is we could have all of our computer systems kind of work together and all be in the same way. Sounds good? Sounds easy? Very hard. Hardly ever happens. And you can see that here at the College of the North Atlantic, which is great. We have some wonderful systems, but they're not fully COBIT. And what I mean by that is, how I know that? Well, we have PeopleSoft. PeopleSoft has a gradebook in it. We use that gradebook. D2L has a grade book in it. We don't use that grade book. What do? We take grades out of D2L, and we put them. You know what I mean? If it was going to be COBIT compliant, we would only put the grades in once. We'd have one system that does what we want to do. Now, the problem is that D2L tries to do that. PeopleSoft tries to do that. We didn't like everything about PeopleSoft. We didn't like everything about D2L, so we took a bit of each of them. But we're not COBIT compliant. All right. Now, everywhere I've worked has had that problem. So as I say, the COVID is a nice idea, very hard to implement. But the ideas are that if you had a blank slate company that you just opened it new, and you had millions of different softwares to choose from, and you could find one that just absolutely perfectly fits your company, or else you could make your own, then you could do this. But that's the ideal. What happens in real life is there's a bunch of different softwares out there. None of them works exactly right. You try and find the ones that, and you don't have time or money to make it yourself. So you try and find a software that works as best you can for you, and then you'll tweak it a bit, and then you'll buy some others and tweak them a bit. And that's what everybody does. But ideally, you would have a strategic plan. You define your architecture. You'd get your wonderful software in that is perfect just for you, and you'd work with it that way. So COBIT would be part of all your decisions when you're buying new software or hardware, that to make sure that you look at the whole system when you do it. And so COBIT means that you're going to have um, uh, some kind of decision management team that the IT people are in. The IT people will be part of the strategic planning. The IT people will have their strategic plan. They'll be looking at the company's strategic plan when they make their IT plan, and that it'll all work together. And so that's what that's about. I'm not going to go through each one of those sort of parts, but basically it's about that planning that I mentioned, and the IT planning works with corporate planning, and all of these things are addressed. And you can look at that in your time, because we are going to run out of time soon. I'm sure of that. Again, that's just a bit more about COBIT, which I'm going to jump over. I'm going to go over this a little bit quickly because I am running out of time. I have this feeling. So ISO, International Organization on Standards, International Standards Organization, they set a number of standards. I see you're nodding your head that you're familiar with it. Maybe you're familiar with it because ISO has a bunch of 9,000 standards which were used for quality. And so if you could see, if somebody had they would put on their trucks, you've probably seen it in the road, ISO 9001 compliant, which just means that they follow standards that are recognized as a quality management system. And it's hard to do. I mean, it's like a big checklist of not thousands, 100 things that you have to do. And if you don't do all of those, you don't get your certification. So you have to do all of them. Um, there are some ISO certifications for the service management, IT service management. ISO 20000 is for IT, is for information technology service management, and there it is mentioned there. The standard for information technology service management, ISO 20000. But we've got these other ones here, a bunch of ISO 27001, 2, etc. These are about information technology security management. So the 27,000s for security, the 27, the 20,000 by itself is IT service management. Now, what do these mean? And again, I was going to go over that kind of quickly. I'm not going to go through each one of those, but what they mean is that in order you can be certified, your company can be certified that you are ISO 27004 compliant, which means that you measure what you're doing for security, that you have put into your company a bunch of measures for security, and there'll be a booklet, and somebody will come out and audit you, and they'll check to make sure you did everything, and then they'll say, good work, here you go, put this on, and you'll have a certificate, just like when you graduated from college, right? Boom, you are ISO 20004 compliant. Hooray. So that's how that works. It's actually an accrediting body. It accredits your company. Now, ITIL's different. ITIL's not going to come out. You're not going to see somebody with like a diploma on the wall, sort of says our company is ITIL compliant. But what will happen is a single person can get an ITIL qualification. So you can go online, maybe. I don't know. I have a friend who got an ITIL qualification. Uh, but you, as an individual, can get an ITIL qualification, which means you understand what are the ITIL processes and you know how to implement it in your company. And so it'd be nice to have a few people in the company that has ITIL. So why? What is ITIL about? Well, ITIL specifies 26. Oh, I should stop here and say, what is ITIL about? ITIL, there was a nice little video that I put on D2L. For about 1 minute in that, the lady explains what is ITIL about. So you could go back there and have a look at it. But uh, ITIL has 26 processes. They're optional. ITIL's optional. But basically, what it is it's a framework that helps you to get your information technology service management good. And if your information technology service management is good, then you can go and get one of those like diplomas on the wall, but it'll be an ISO 20000 diploma. And there'll be a lot of things that you have to check. And one of the things that you might check there is you say, oh, well, this is how we do our service management. We follow all of these ITIL guidelines. And that gets us to our ISO 20000. So yeah, there's 26. The really important one, the first process that they mention in ITIL is our incident management, and everybody uses a help desk sort of thing. All right, so incident management is going to work with some kind of help desk and some kind of ticketing. And so we're going to see that in this course. You'll see that the labs that you'll do sitting right at those computers right there, or you can do it at home because this is a cloud software. So you can do it at home or you can do it at the desk where you're sitting. And we'll be doing some labs with a incident management software. So there's 27 processes. As I said, incident management, but also problem management, configuration management, change management. There's a bunch of them, and we'll talk about them. So what this slide is trying to show us is that ITIL has this process which kind of never ends. You start, yeah, you start up here with the well, I should show it on here, right? So the students, uh, you start here with this IT strategy. From your IT strategy, then you do a design. The service design is you're going to create a package. Does it mention it there? You create a service package, and that service package is then what you're going to offer the customers. Usually so we got 10 minutes. You're going to make it, no problem. So usually the service package um, me is going to stratify your services. You're going to say, okay, we got service A, we got service B, and we got service C. Service A costs this much, and this is what you get. Service B costs this much, and this is what you get. And service C costs this much, and this is what you get. And so you take the the resources that you've got, you develop these services, and then you price them, and then you offer them to your customer. Now, each of those, when we're talking in an IT department, each of those is what we're the service is going to be. How are you going to support them? How are you going to support your customers in with their IT support? A good example of how to look at this, I think, which is very applicable for us because we're in IT, would be if you looked at Arito, because Arito is kind of they have a lot of documents out there and you can see it, right? You can just go onto Google and see. You can see the service packages that they offer. Okay, so I want a communication package. I'll go to Arito and have a look at what are their communication package. Well, look, here's this package. I can have a Hala, which is a prepaid card. Or I can have this package where I'll do a postpaid and I get a bit of TV and I get a bit of Wi-Fi and I have a fiber connection. Or I get this one here where I've got mobile data, where I can have that for the full month. I can have unlimited mobile data, and this costs this much. Or I can have this one here where I get, where I buy a bit of mobile data every I pay 100 reals and get so many gigs of mobile data. So we got all of these different packages, right? And each one comes with a different service level. And so if I get this one, I call this phone number, and these people will help me. And if I get that one, maybe I've got another phone number for that. But the thing is, depending on the service, you get a different, and what you're paying, you're going to get a different sort of service from them. So the service design is going to be the smart people getting together and saying, this is what we think our customers want. We've got this nice infrastructure here at Arito, and we got all this fiber. We've got all these communication exchanges. We can offer people all this lovely communications. Okay, so here's some packages that we can give them. We can give them this mobile. We can give them this fiber. We can give them this out in the desert data with 5G or whatever. And this is how much we should charge them. And this is the backup service that we should give them. So that's all done in the design. Then when we've designed that, we go and build out the communication towers, build out any other additional things that we need for that. And then we get the right people to service those things. And then we roll it out. And then once we've rolled it out, then we have to have our people there to make sure that it keeps working. And that's our operations area. And then after some time, we'll realize that some things worked really well, some things need to be changed a bit. And so we go back and start again, come out with some new products, new services. Maybe we found some new technology that we can offer some other thing that's better. So that's very briefly how I think that this would apply to a company like Arito. So here's another framework. So we talked about a couple so far, right? That's three frameworks we've talked about already. We talked about ISO, which is standards, which is going to give you a certificate saying you pass, you meet your standards. Uh, the other one we mentioned there was COBIT, which sort of is your system works for the whole company, right? It's not just on its own. Holistic, right? You don't have lots of different systems competing within your organization. You got something that sort of sticks together. That's our COBIT idea. And then we had our ITIL, which is very much about sort of making that bridge between the customers. And lastly, we got this one MOF, which is Microsoft Operations Framework. Whereas ITIL looks like it could be a bit more focused on like service desks and things like that. Um, our um, our MOF seems to be very sort of more um, how do you say, generic IT development stuff. Okay, so whereas ITIL suited um, pro, package development that applied to Rito, I think maybe our MOF might suit just application development, building applications within our organization. So it's got a very simple life cycle there. You plan things, you deliver them, and then you operate them, and then you go back. And it looks a little bit like the one we had for ITIL, doesn't it? But it's a little bit simpler. There's a little bit more in there in the plan phase. As it says there, we're looking at how can we come up with something better strategically. So strategically just means we're looking a bit further into the future. So over the horizon, into the future, how can we offer a better support for our IT? Then once we've planned that out, then we start building it and delivering it. We operate it. As we're operating it, we're always looking at the quality there, we're measuring it, and we're looking at things that we can do to improve it. And lastly, that managed layer. All right, so lastly here, well, we are coming to the end here. Hooray. We talk about the maturity level of our information technology service management. And so what I want you to do is look at that scale there from top to bottom. If you look at the top, that means very immature or new. If we just dropped in and we had sort of new systems, we're not really sort of working with them very carefully. Um, that's why we use these terms, individual heroics. We might have some really awesome systems, but there's no real strategy, you know. We just, you know, these guys do this, those guys do that, and it's ad hoc and chaotic. If you look down at the bottom, when we're optimizing, then we're having our system is very deliberate, very careful. The all everything that's happened before is taken as an input, so that all of our mistakes are carefully analyzed, and we have a very careful plan that strategizes where we're going to go in the future. So that would be optimizing. So I would say if you go down and look at those things through there, what are the things that we notice along the way? When we go from our initial, then we're going to develop some kind of management of it, so that not everything just happens. There is some direction to it, and then we have some kind of plan there. That's the definition. Then we measure. This is very important. Quantitatively managed means that we're measuring things. We're measuring this is working, that's not. This is our throughput. This is our response times. Those types of things are all measured. And then we can, lastly, we can have a very careful, deliberate process, which would be a quality process. Okay, so KPI, I don't know if you've heard of that before. It's kind of a management term, key performance indicator. So basically, that's going to be a thing that if you have a yearly, um, would you call it a performance meeting? And we have those. So many companies have that. Then your KPIs would be things where you would say at the start of the year, this is what I'm going to do this year. I commit to it. All right. And so then we're going to measure it. Then at the end of the year, we see how did I do? Okay. And it's not just for individuals, that would be for the entire IT department. We sort of set some goals and then we measure it and make sure that we've done it. Okay. So some of the things that we would measure for an IT system, we would set goals for all of these things: serviceability, availability, how long it takes to resolve, all of those things. Now, these things would then, so we've got this KPIs. These things could then be input into this thing that we call the SLA, the service level agreement. The service level agreement is going to take each of these things which are in our KLAs, and it's going to sort of put it in writing so that it becomes like a contract with our customers. There we go. There's the conclusion. So ITSM, it's about being organized, I guess you could say, which is going to save you money. It's going to give you clear rules, and it's going to make sure that your IT works within the company. And hooray. So we kind of finished. I got a couple of stuff here. Who's in class? So do you guys mind if I turn this on you? Move over this way, guys. There's our two guys, and we got one lady who doesn't mind, that doesn't like. There we go. So say hello. It's Nasser and Khalid, right? Nasser and Khalid, and I'm not putting it on you because you don't like. So what's your name? Aya. Welcome, Aya. So we have three students